While bird photography isn't easy, and you need to know every trick in the book to achieve the skills needed to take great images, today I'm going to share with you the 10 things that would have made my photography journey so much easier had I known about them when I first started in wildlife photography. Now, some of these tips you'll already know, and some of them are just plain common sense. But I'll bet that there will be a tip or technique here that you're either not just using at all or just not using correctly. These tips could well make a difference and speed up your progress to better bird photography. Wildlife photography of any kind has a very steep learning curve, and by following all or just some of these guidelines, you could flatten that curve and get better results immediately. For a new aspiring photographer, this could be the most important few minutes in your entire photography journey. So make sure you take the time to check out these basic but invaluable tips. Hi, I'm Ken Hadfield. Welcome to my Better Photography channel. Number 1, equipment. Well, let's face it, your equipment can make or break your success. But you don't necessarily need top-notch high-end equipment to take good wildlife shots. What you do need to remember is that the lens is more important than the camera. Most modern DSLR cameras, even lower price models, can now offer really good quality images. But the lens, well, that really needs to be the best you can afford. As a minimum, I'd recommend a minimum 300mm telephoto lens. This will give you decent shots from a reasonable distance. If you're able to fit an extender, then you could potentially extend your range up to as much as 600mm, which opens up many more opportunities at a greater distance. But remember, with an extender, you will lose 1 or 2 stops of light, making it harder to get a good shot in lower light. When buying, consider the second-hand market, where you can sometimes pick up a higher spec camera or a lens at a lower price. But always try before you buy and inspect the glass carefully for wear and tear, scratch marks or interior dust. Camera settings. Now, I'm not going to get too technical about settings because that's an entire video on its own. I'm just going to give you a guide to get you started. The basic technique I used as a new photographer was to use the aperture priority setting with the aperture set as low as possible to blur the background. I would use f4 for a single bird or up to f7.6 to capture 2 birds or a small group of birds. If the bird is facing me with its tail pointed away, I would use a higher f-stop, f.7, to make sure the tail remained in focus, and the lower f4 stop if the bird is in profile. But remember, with aperture priority, the shutter speed is then determined by the camera, and you'll need a fast shutter speed for flight shots, especially for fast moving birds. If I found that the shutter speed was too slow, then I adjusted to a higher ISO setting, which raised the shutter speed until the exposure meter on the back of the camera balanced in the centre, which indicates a good exposure. It's a simple start to basic bird photography, but it works well, especially in good light. Now I intend to do a more detailed video on advanced settings to cope with low light, flight shots and small fast moving birds in an upcoming video. But using these initial settings will at least get you up and running. Learn to understand your histogram. Photography is all about exposure. Get it right and your shot will be perfect. And most cameras offer you the opportunity to examine your exposure on what is basically a scale that shows you the lightest and darkest areas of your image. Meaning you can actually see whether you're over or underexposing. A lot of new photographers don't realise just how valuable this graph can be, and either don't understand the histogram or just ignore it. And that's a big mistake, because it's really easy to understand. Let me show you just how easy it is and how, by using the histogram, you can be sure of a good exposure. Okay, this is the back of my camera showing a photograph or a series of photographs I've taken to demonstrate the histogram. The histogram is on the
right hand side there, and basically it's a graph, and you see the white mountain there making its way over to the left hand side. That means it's going towards the shadow, the dark side. What you don't want is for that to go off the edge, otherwise you're underexposing. Similarly on the other side, and I'll show you shortly, it'll go off to the right side, and that's overexposing. So this is a well exposed shot here. It is pushing towards the left, but it hasn't gone over to completely to the left, so it's within the tolerance there. And you can see everything is there, and everything is in good order. So let's go over to one stop under. And you can see now there is some brightness. You can probably still get away with it. It hasn't gone off yet, so we got away with that one. But let's go 2 stops under. And where you go 2 stops under, you see everything goes off and climbs up on the left hand side, and that particular image is underexposed. So what you would do for that is you would actually reduce your shutter speed to brighten the picture up, or increase the ISO. So we'll go back to the well exposed one again. Again, it's not going off at the edges in any way. We've got to keep that little mountain inside that box. You don't want either edge to go off on the left or the right. So where we go on the first shot and overexposing, you can see it's going towards the right hand side this time, and you can see what we call blinkies on the photograph there, flashing on the photograph, to showing us that on those particular areas there's no detail whatsoever. The camera's saying I have no pixels there whatsoever. That will be pure white, and it's totally unrecoverable. Watch out for them, and watch out for the little mountain going off to the right hand side. One more stop of exposure further, and you can see the effect clearly gone right off across to the other side, to the right, and of course you can see the blinkies have gone crazy. And that's basically how the histogram works. What your job to do is basically to adjust the camera so you get back to that. And by looking at the histogram, you can see nothing's going off on the left there, nothing's going off on the right. You've got a well exposed image, and even if you want to do a wee bit of manipulation, it's well within Photoshop capability to make any other corrections you want to make. It's a great tool. You should really consider getting to know it, because it's so simple.
Practice at home. Practice is super important for any new photographer, and to be able to do this at home at any time you choose is both convenient and a perfect way to practice your skills. I've got 2 bird feed stations in my garden which are hosts to an abundance of common birds, and I've already made a video on how to create a similar rustic feed station completely free of charge. If you want to view it, just follow the link above. Always allow space behind the feed station so you can achieve a blurry background, and try to place the feeder so you can shoot from a window in your home, effectively using your house as a hide. This way you can capture the bird's behaviour season by season, giving you lots of opportunities all year round. If you'd rather just use ordinary garden bird feeders, try pushing interesting branches into the top of bushes and shrubs around the garden. And you'll find the birds will usually settle there before moving down to the feeders, potentially giving you a shot with a clearer background. If you don't have room for a feeder, then visit a local nature park. Look out for easy subjects at first. Ducks and geese. They're great subjects, but remember to get down low for a more interesting image. Try for a nice reflection shot, and watch out for sudden takeoff. Also, these large waterfowl are much easier to capture in flight due to their size and low speed. That's likely to be one of your first rewarding, well-exposed flight shots, and well worth the effort. Plus, many nature parks have a feed station, so it's worth making a visit to use their facilities for practice. Photograph at the right time of the day. You know, you often hear mention of the golden hour in landscape photography, and it's just the same with all wildlife photography. So get out early, or wait until later in the day when the sun's low to get the best results. Also, the birds are far more active in the morning and in the evening than they are through the day, so make the most of the action whilst the light's at its best. Photographing in the middle of the day can be extremely challenging, with direct sunlight burning out white feathers or giving unacceptable contrasty images. And even on cloudy days, your images can appear to be flat and dull. So give yourself the best chance of success by carefully choosing when you decide to shoot. Use back button focus. Now again, I've already produced a video showing you how to set up and use back button focus, which you can view by using the link above. Back button focus has been one of the biggest game changers for me, and since using this setting, my success rate for sharp images, especially in birds in flight, has gone through the roof. Removing the focusing from the shutter button means that you can adopt a button on the back of your camera to take care of focus. So I can now use the shutter button to meter and capture the shot, whilst using a nominated button on the back of the camera to focus. That means I can lock the focus on a certain spot where I can see the birds all settling and fire away, knowing that the birds will be sharp in this pre-focused area. If you only try one of the tips from this video today, I recommend that this is the one to try. Be patient. Wild bird photography is very much a waiting game. You might get lucky and hit a great shot straight away, but generally, anywhere you set up will involve a wait to have the wildlife settle and be happy with your presence. Keep absolutely quiet. Turn your shutter to quiet mode if you can, and don't go swinging a camera around wildly. Birds are notoriously sensitive to movement and very keen-eyed. So if you spot something interesting, move your camera slowly and be prepared to hold off if you think you might lose the shot due to movement. Play the percentage game and hope you hit focus before the bird flies off. Watch out for natural behaviour signs. Wild birds very often give away signs when they're about to move, and quite often they'll keep returning to the same spot to feed. A good sign of return behaviour is feces on popular branches. Watch out for other signs too, especially pre-flight rituals that most birds do every time they're about to fly. A head nod, a feather shake, and very often evacuation of their bowels are a sure sign that they're about to lift off. If you observe this behaviour over and over by the same bird, start shooting just after you see the bird do its ritual. Yes, you'll likely take a lot of wasted shots, but if that perfect lift-off shot is amongst your images, then it's all been worthwhile. Fill the frame. No one wants a tiny speck in the centre of the image, so get as close as possible, but when you're framing in your viewfinder, allow space for the bird to fly into. It's easy to get carried away and concentrate on a close-up portrait, but it's a wasted opportunity if you miss out on a flight shot because the bird takes flight and all you capture is the tail as it disappears out of the frame. Think about what you want from the shot and consider the possibility of capturing a portrait shot, then reframing for a possible flight shot at the same time. Don't continuously check your images. I know we all want to know if we've got the shot, but I have witnessed over and over again photographers missing shots because their head is pointed downwards, endlessly checking their images. Concentrate on what's happening next, not what's already gone. You've got what you've got, and staring at your images on the back of your camera won't change anything. Yes, of course, check initially for exposure and focus, but then get your head behind your viewfinder and shoot away. Here's an image I took from a hide in Norfolk a few years ago, and I was the only photographer in the hide to get the shot. This marsh harrier was showing behaviour never seen before at this particular location. All of the other photographers had taken a few shots of the baby avocets and then started checking their images. Well, I kept my head up, and this opportunity came from nowhere, and it caused quite a stir, eventually featuring in the UK national press. So don't miss future opportunities by looking at history on the back of your camera, because you never know what's just about to happen. Now, these 10 tips are designed to get you started in wild bird photography, or if you're already practicing your skills, to give you a few more hints to get that perfectly exposed shot. You know, there's a fine line between good photography and great photography. Follow these tips and you could well be on your way to great bird photography. See you next time on my Better Photography channel.